Right.
Welcome into another episode of the Casual GM podcast. We would have been on time, but we were discussing the all-time NHL points leaders.
Yes.
I am, of course, your host, Drew, and along with me, as always, my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
I'm hanging in there. Getting over a little bit of COVID, which really sucks, by the way. I feel like I get hit by a truck.
Yeah, don't get COVID. It's I've heard nothing positive about it. So
yes. Yeah. 0 out of 5 stars. Would not recommend.
0 out of 5 stars. That's cute. I'm freezing, which is why I'm wrapped up in one of my comfy blankets. And we'll stay that way until my house gets warmer, which is unlikely. So, but Mike,
the joys of living in Michigan. Why sports players don't want to come up here?
38 degrees today. 38. It was raining, so that's a cold rain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it is currently raining. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited.
Yeah.
So, but Mike, the NFL does not stop simply because it is raining in our hometowns.
This is accurate.
It keeps going. So let's jump in with some news and notes, shall we?
Yeah. Well, first, let's do a quick shout out to our new subs, Matthew Turner and Joey D. Bonesaw. Thank you guys for subscribing and participating. Matthew,
I've always thought
across the pond, if I remember right.
Yeah, Matthew is one of our UK fans. Thank you, and supporters. We love his stream as well, Roar the Lions UK. So, and we interviewed Matt on a previous episode way back when we were first getting our legs under us.
Yeah, that was a good time. We should do that again.
We should do that again. I tried to coax him into doing a debate about whether or not the Lions should draft Bryce Young, but he didn't seem all that confident in his opinion, which was a bummer because he and I could probably have a civil conversation about it, I think. So,
yeah.
So that's cool. But anyways, news and notes from around the NFL. We were chatting a little bit before the show. Mike, what caught your eye?
Some really absurd games. Number one, we'll start at the beginning of the week with the Commanders-Bears thriller on Thursday. Jeez. And that's been the best game that they've had in the last couple of weeks on Thursday. That's how bad that was.
Yeah, a touchdown was scored, I heard.
That's accurate. Yep. And in fairness, there was almost one at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
Almost.
Well,
there were some other upsets I thought were interesting. Like I didn't expect the Falcons to beat up on the 49ers. I didn't expect the Jets to beat the crap out of the Packers, although I loved it.
Sure.
What else? There was Ravens. I thought we were going to beat the Giants. The Steelers beat the Buccaneers. And I know you had this. I didn't. I thought the Cardinals would actually beat the Seahawks.
Yeah, I actually won money on that game. So thank you very much, Seattle. Appreciate you showing me, a Lions fan, exactly what your team can do because I put $20 on you this week. So,
and then of course we saw the AFC Championship preview, most likely between the Bills and the Chiefs.
At some point, I think that we should simply go to. We should go to a system that basically just ranks all teams in either conference by record, and then you just have a matchup system based on like one place 16 or whatever it is, or these 4 teams get buys. Here's the rest of the matchups, and you just have interconference championships. I think that would be more fun than the current setup where it's just like, okay, someone's going to play either the Chiefs or the Bills and just get slaughtered. So,
yeah, I think that's really tough, though, because then why do you have divisions? Rivalries don't matter at that point because winning your division means nothing. So, I get why they're doing it this way because it builds some of that kind of anticipation.
There are no rivalries in professional sports. That's ridiculous.
Oh, sure there are.
That's ridiculous.
Sure there are. You don't
rivalry games exist in college.
I don't know. Like as a longtime supporter of the Red Wings, I can tell you one of the greatest rivalries of all time is the Red Wings Colorado Avalanche.
In football, Michael, in football. And
you said pro sports.
Well, you should have known what I meant. So, Shannon, no one does play Parcheesi anymore. The only human being I was ever aware that played Parcheesi was my grandmother. But if you enjoy it,
she's older than me, so.
Jeez.
She's also better looking than me, so
that's
it worked out well for her.
Considering that you introduce yourself on our podcast every week is, how do you do it? You say
handsome as ever.
Handsome as ever. You know, that's really playing up Shannon here.
Yeah.
Who I like brings an element, a non-football element to the chat. She's doing a real good job.
Yeah, she's our chaos monkey.
Every chat needs one, right?
Right on.
Here it is, truth. So. But Michael, this is a mailbag episode.
This is the mailbag episode. So we posted on a few different Lions groups and said, hey, send your feedback to us. Throw some questions out there. We got a few. So I guess we might as well just get to it.
Yeah, I should mention, though, that those groups almost completely let us down, and we had to go to our friends to make questions.
Yeah, I mean, we need to get some more of those folks emailing that stuff in, but we did get some good questions from people that watch. So
excellent.
All right, so I'm gonna pop the first one up there.
All right.
Regardless of their record at the end of the season, do you agree that Campbell should get at least one more season? And also, how about Aaron Glenn?
So they gave Dan Campbell a 6-year. You are Shannon. Yes. Look to thine self for definition. They should give Campbell way more than one additional year. Like, this narrative is solely based on win-loss record, which I understand. That's fine. Ultimately, everybody in professional sports are gauged as to whether or not they are on a winning team, responsible for a winning team, or the opposite, which is a losing team. And I think it would look terrible if at the end of this season you're like, well, we're not whatever the ownership or general manager or coaching staff thought we should be, so on and so forth, and ignore the progress that this team has made because it's not showing up in the win-loss column. So I maintain that this team has taken 2 years to adjust their salary cap. I maintain that this team was completely bereft of talent on both sides of the ball for a long time, and then the Matthew Stafford trade obviously did not help that. So I think that we downgraded a quarterback in that trade.
But upgraded in assets.
And let's talk about those assets, because those assets are draft picks. And like, when you draft people, it is rare that a rookie gets a chance to play on an NFL team, and it is more rare that they have an impact on the game as a rookie. So like, Penei Sewell was heralded as like a nearly generational tackle prospect because he was super young. He had these elite grades while at Oregon, and he sat out a year. So like, he wasn't injured or anything. And he's come into the NFL and he's done well. Like, he's one of the better right tackles in football currently. He has had an immediate impact. Amon-Ra St. Brown took 10 weeks, before they really started working him in to the process. But then he finished last year very strong. And then this year, Malcolm Rodriguez, like, that's 3 impact rookies, 2 of them in rounds 4 or later in 2 drafts. And we're going to talk about Levi and Wuzurike. I promise you, Zakwa, because I cannot fucking stand it. So like, they have found impact players. And then I would also lump people like the guys that we haven't seen yet. Zach Pascal, Jameson Williams. I would put Hutch. I would put even Jeff Okudah, who's in his 3rd year, as developmental players. Aleem McNeil. I mean, these are people that you probably shouldn't really gauge as to whether or not they've had a positive or negative impact on your team until they're in probably through the third year of their rookie contracts, and we're just not there yet. But like,
and guys like Jameson Williams, where we drafted them and he's hurt, he's expected to make a full recovery.
Right.
It's an injury that guys are recovering from, not just with more regularity, but with closer to 100% than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact, one of the things that drives me nuts is I hear a lot of fans are like, well, he didn't play for half of the season, he's a bust.
Right.
How do you know? Like, we still get him 4.5 seasons, even if he doesn't play at all this season, which I don't even care if he does, because this is not our Super Bowl year.
Right.
Like, I want him to play because that gives him experience and all that kind of stuff, and we can kind of get him working with the guys. But even if he doesn't, we get him for 4 more years on a rookie deal.
Right.
Even if he's 90% as fast as he was before, he's still going to be one of the top 10 fastest players in the NFL. Like,
this is one of the top 3 fastest players in the NFL.
Right. Even if he's only 90% though, right? So if he's at 90%, he's
still top 3 at 90.
Possibly,
for sure.
Right? So it's an investment. He's not a bust yet just because he hasn't played. This isn't the year that we wanted, that we got him to be our tipping point. We got him now because in year 3, that's where we're really, hoping to make those big strides. But he's drafting now. He's not being drafted in 2 years from now. So it kind of drives me nuts when you're like, oh, we drafted an injured person, so therefore it's a bad pick. I'm like, maybe if he never recovers, then it's a bad pick. But that's the way this is going.
That entire narrative is driven by the win-loss record. It has nothing to do with like how one player has progressed or not from one season to the next.
Yeah.
Like the Levi and Wuzurike argument, right? Like he's hurt and out the season, so he's quote unquote done with football, right? Like what Zakwa just put in the chat. But could that logic not also apply to Jeff Okudah last year? And yet here he is producing and like being a starter level talent for the Detroit Lions at a position that they desperately need, and like, if Tracy Walker hadn't been hurt, is he one of the 2 defensive backs that they should move forward with? I mean, like, it's been terrible. So the rookies and the young guys, let's be honest, that's about the only people that they've really added to the team under Brad Holmes. Like, he has signed guys like Josh Reynolds, DJ Chark, Chris Board, Deshaun Elliott. Like, these are guys getting an opportunity to play that would not have gotten an opportunity to play on a better, more developed roster.
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting their opportunity to prove it. That's why they're prove it deals. That's why they're cheap. That's why they're available. That's
blah, blah, blah. Usually 1 year, maybe 2, right?
And let's talk about the injury thing, because the injury thing is not limited to just the draft picks, right?
Yep.
But like, the reason that Brad Holmes is drafting quote unquote injured players, Jameson Williams, Pascal, and Wuzurike had issues coming out of college, right? There's not going to be any player that is 100% injury free through college who plays at an elite level. It's just, now maybe they don't have an ACL, but do they have a history of hamstring issues or groin pulls? Have they popped their shoulder out of socket? Have they torn a ligament? Have they ripped up their labrum? Have they broken a collarbone? What is it? So it's like, the reason Wuzurike was available in the second round when the Lions took him was due to his injury history. So like, if you're Brad Holmes and you're trying to get this team back as quick as possible, you have to weigh the risk between a player's injury history that is part of the baggage that comes with all of any draft pick, and what you think that guy could be, quote unquote, if he is healthy. And if it works out, then you have drafted a player at a certain position that should have gone much earlier. And that is a strategy to try and include more talent on your roster more quickly. Now, it's not going to work out all the time, but even the best GMs in football only hit on about 3 out of 7 picks. So like, if you want to go through Brad Holmes' draft history pick by pick, we're way ahead of the 3 out of 7 mark.
Yeah.
In both years. So like that pick is just people complaining about something that's obvious because they are unhappy that the team is 1-4 when what should it be? Right. I mean, every time I hear that argument, I say, well, if Jared Goff hadn't thrown 2 pick sixes, this team's 3-2. Is that legit logical defense? I don't think so. But I put as much thought into it as they put into their thing.
Yeah.
So to answer Zaqua's question just real quick here, I don't believe that Le'Veon Wuzurike is done with football. It's a back issue. I looked for like an hour today on the internet. I cannot figure out what kind of back issue it is. So there's no way to know whether or not he is. I think what happened was they wanted him to play at some point this year. He probably wanted to play at some point this year. They saw a bunch of doctors. They didn't like the doctors' opinions that they got and just eventually decided, let's give you a year off. But like this guy came into camp in like the best shape of his life. And unfortunately, this happened.
Yeah.
But like also Vaitai is down with a back injury. Is he done with football? I don't think so. No one is talking about whether Vaitai. Huh?
I'm hoping he's done with us at the end of this year.
Well, me too, just because I want to free up some contract space. But like, yeah, see, they're not great analogies, but like, but like, there's every chance in the world that Wuzurike comes back next season and is, at worst, like a good rotational piece. Like one of the problems on the D line is they just don't have anybody healthy to rotate. So like
that's one of the problems that our fandom has with. It's one of the things I don't think they understand is how low our base level of talent is across the board.
It's terrible.
It's as bad as you can get, which is why our defense is giving up a historical amount of points every week. Every little bit helps, and we're going to make small incremental improvements. We can't go from historically bad to top 5. It's just not a thing that you can do in one off season. Not with the contracts that we had and that we had to shed from the Quinn Tricia era. You have to let those draft choices come into their own. 5 games is not enough to say, well, Hutch was a bust. He's not good enough. He should be more impactful. Like you said, most rookies aren't super impactful. Now, granted, in your top 5, top 10, you're typically almost always getting a starter and you're almost always getting someone reasonably impactful. But what is that, right? Is 3 sacks and 10 or 12 pressures over 4 games reasonable for a rookie? I think so. Like that sounds pretty good. If you multiply that by 4 and you look at what it would look like for the a full season, that's 12 sacks and, I forget how many, 40 pressures, right? Yeah. That's not bad. 12 sacks for a rookie. I'd take that.
But I would take considerably less, to be honest. I mean, like, I have never viewed Hutchinson in college. He was a number 1 edge rusher. I don't think that he's a number 1 edge rusher in the pros. I think that he's going to be kind of like a Bud Dupree cleanup expert in the pro game. He needs a running buddy. Like, so I'm actually coming out of the bye week. I'm pretty excited that John Comiskey can play. If he can play a little bit, because he was leading the team in pressures. Like he was the one guy that was getting in, collapsing. Oh, Jesus Christ. Collapsing the
pocket, collapsing the pocket.
Thank you. Wow. So collapsing the pocket. Nailed it. So
I had faith in you, bro.
And so like, if you have someone who's capitalizing on the attention that Hutch is getting, great. Now he's having a realistic impact on this team. Who knows what Pascal's going to bring? What is that going to look like? I don't care. I want to start seeing what this team's going to look like next year, 2 years from now. And this is a part of it. And so like Zakwa here said, are we going to have to reinvest in the D-line? Yeah, because it's not good. You have a Quares contract. We don't know. I mean, Campbell came out and said that he hopes that he plays this year, but like We've heard nothing, literally nothing about his recovery process. And Charles Harris looks exactly like who I thought Charles Harris was this year.
Mediocre at best.
7.5 was an aberration. Thanks a lot. Thanks for nothing, Charles. And, John Pennicini retired. Michael Brockers continues to get worse. Yeah, there's going to need to be reinvestment on the defensive line.
But which people has come back, it does still, like when Pascal comes back, it's going to make a incremental improvement compared to what we currently have. And that's all we can do, as it's a rebuild. So like actually the next kind of question in the mailbag really kind of comes through, and this has been kind of the topic that I've seen across social media and the different newspapers. And that is the Lions rebuild behind schedule?
No.
100%. Right.
So once again, this narrative comes from the win-loss record, right? Yep. Because everyone else, the people who watch the games, who are not working on the team, who aren't coaching or making personnel decisions, cap decisions, all this other stuff, they are not the ones who are ultimately determining whether or not the rebuild is working or in what stage it is, right? So all that the fandom can do is say we're completely results oriented and the only result that matters is the win-loss record. Okay, so stop it, Shannon. Be nice. So I think the rebuild is just on pace, right? So like I had my expectations of what I wanted this team's win-loss record to be when we came into the season, but when we did our like look at the schedule in the beginning, that was assuming that everyone was healthy, and this is the third most injured team by dollars, at least in the NFL. Through 5 weeks, 6 weeks. So I just don't think that you can accurately gauge this roster until you have that money coming off of, PUP and NFI and, IR and all those other things, and let's also not forget that like every week, like when this team goes out there to perform, like, the roster cost you north of $200 million this year. But I mean, they have about 145 actually playing on the field. So, I mean, every other team has got players on those same lists or what have you, but it's
one of the threads that I saw was about we should have taken Micah Parsons instead of Penei Sewell because our defense is so bad. And again, it comes back to that same results oriented thinking of our defense is bad, so therefore we should have done this other thing before. But my thought was like, you're saying that sure, Parsons is probably a generational talent at linebacker, and he comes right in and he kicks ass and takes names. But are they saying that we shouldn't have taken a generational talent at tackle?
So like that's my bitch with the
better value, right?
So that's my bitch with it, right? Is that like if would you trade Penei Sewell for Micah Parsons right now?
No.
Right. So like if
not
that
a rookie deal.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying like he is full-time edge rusher now. So if he came out as an edge rusher and not a linebacker, an off-the-ball linebacker, would you trade Penei Sewell for Micah Parsons?
He's up. We wouldn't.
So like I get the point, right? But like if you just reverse the first round picks from Brad Holmes' first two classes and say we went Micah Parsons and then Evan Neal or somebody, this year at 2 or whatever, or what's that kid that got drafted by Carolina? It's not a Kwangu, is it?
It's close. It's like
Iquanu, yeah. So you can always make that argument, but that's hindsight being 2020. You don't get the benefit of that when you're doing the drafting. And no one complained about drafting Penei Sewell.
No, I mean that's the guy that you run to the podium with his name in his hand, in your hand.
So, like, to Shannon's point here, when will Hutch level up his game to make him worth a number 2 draft pick? He's worth that now.
Yeah.
Like,
but we really won't see the real results for another year and a half. We're less than a half season in, right?
He's gonna need some seasoning, just like all these guys do. But like Kayvon Thibodeau, Trayvon Walker, Jermaine Johnson, none of these guys are a Bosa. None of these guys are a Chase Young or a Myles Garrett. I mean, stop it. Like, those guys are.
And even Chase Young hasn't lived up to.
And he hasn't played this year so far, I don't believe.
No, I mean, he's been good. And he's probably even been quite good, but he's not been elite.
No, he isn't.
So I think we have some unreasonable expectations everywhere when it comes to immediate production by rookies, by perfect calling of games and perfect decision making by young coaches. Like, yeah, I mean, Campbell's made some bonehead plays. Hopefully he's learned from it. Professional growth is part of it. You don't get to be a Bill Belichick the very first time you coach, right? That took him years. He made bonehead mistakes early. Campbell's made some bonehead mistakes. He made some calls that he probably shouldn't have. He's made some decisions he probably shouldn't have. But that's okay. That's how you learn. That's how you grow from that. And I think the expectation that, you can only hire a head coach that's already been a head coach means no one's ever going to end up being a new head coach. And if that's the case, you only have the same 32 people that are cycling around from team to team. So you have to hire some younger head coaches, because you're going to find those guys like a Sean McVay. Like, Sean Payton was a rookie head coach when he went to New Orleans, and that worked out really dang well. Yeah, Sean McVay was a rookie head coach when he went to LA, and he is working out really well. Like, why do we think that we can only go for people that have a full coaching experience? They've already been there and done that and everything else, when history shows that's actually not likely to get you there. It's newer coaches tend to be more successful even than older coaches.
Mm-hmm. But and the fire Dan Campbell crowd is when my boss hired me, he was like, don't come to me with complaints, come to me with solutions, like, I don't want to hear your complaints, and I was like, okay, I get it, like, that just sucks.
Yeah.
And it just sucks listening to everyone complain about the Lions, because they happen to be 1-4 and have like 3 1-score, lost games again, same thing they did last year. And no one's offering up like, oh, this is the solution to what the coaching issue is. It's just, we'll fire this guy, things will get better because he's not here anymore.
Because the next guy will be better. Well,
that's dumb. Campbell was the next guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like we were like, oh, fire Campbell and pick up McVay. Well, McVay's not leaving. Or pick up Sean.
Why would he?
So it's not like you can go fire this guy and then get this guy, and you can't force him.
Yeah.
Right. So, and even then, doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be successful.
Right. I mean, like, when you say fire Dan Campbell, like, what you're basically saying is like, let's tear this down again. I mean, is that guy gonna want all these players that he didn't have input? Like, Campbell and Holmes have a great communication. Like, we saw it all through Hard Knocks. You see it. You see it in the draft room videos. And yeah, Ben Johnson's been an offensive coordinator for 5 games. Like, let's pump the brakes.
He was a quarterback coach last year, right?
I mean, like, I get it, but like, being a head coach and being an offensive coordinator are not the same things.
Well, and the same people that want to fire Dan Campbell because he's never been a head coach and doesn't know how to be a head coach, want to promote Ben Johnson, who's never been a head coach.
Right. I mean, like, ultimately, right, there you go. Like, I mean, if they do that and Ben Johnson starts out next in 2023 at 1-5, and people are like, well, let's fire Ben Johnson, like, go fuck yourselves. I'm so sick of this. All right. What's the next question?
Right as I was taking a drink, I got you. Mm-hmm. All right. Next question. Should Detroit make a play for Roquan Smith if he's available and not asking for too much money?
No, I'm so tired of this question. No. Like, not only is he going to ask for way too much money, he's also not very good as far as I'm concerned. Does he get a lot of tackles? Yup. But like, if you look at the metrics by which like you can gauge linebackers biting on play action and how badly they bite on play action, this dude is number 1 or number 2 in the NFL. Like, you are not taking Roquan Smith to get better playing the run.
Yeah.
You are getting Roquan Smith so that he can cover a tight end or spy a quarterback or something like that. And I would rather draft a guy than sign Roquan Smith.
Yeah, I'm the same.
You mean Deron Payne from Washington?
No, yeah, that's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what he wants on the open market, but yeah, I'm not opposed to that idea.
All right, next up. Are the struggles of the defense more about the players or the defensive coordinator?
It's the players. So is Aaron Glenn into his second season as a defensive coordinator? Yep. You know, like I would like to see. I mean, so I've been reading some articles about the Lions on The Athletic, this online magazine, and there's this writer for them named Colton Pouncey, and he's put out some interesting, at least, perspectives on the Lions. And so his take on Aaron Glenn is that Aaron Glenn wants to force pressure. So what to do that, what the Lions have done all year thus far and most of last year, is they blitz a ton and they play a ton of man. And you just don't have the guys to do that. Now, you can get those guys if you continue the rebuild long enough, right? And you find good players who can do what you're asking them to do, both in the secondary and on the D line. However, he should understand he doesn't have those players right now. So, like, my recommendation for how to fix the defense would be play more zone on first and second down, keep all of the eyes in the backfield so that you don't give up as big of plays. Like, the only defensive back that can play man coverage is Okudah. And like asking him to go up against Terry McLaurin and all these number ones that are, Devonta Smith and like all these guys that he's played so far this year. He's done an admirable job against some good players. Excellent. But like now Tracy Walker's hurt. That's a big loss, and like they were playing Melifonwu. I mean, like there are no defensive backs on this team that they haven't played who are available.
Yeah.
And so, Jerry Jacobs is supposed to come back. We're hoping for Dallas, probably Miami. And hopefully that's going to be, moving in the right direction. But we're now, I mean, you're talking about, like if you really want to talk about Jerry Jacobs being your white knight, like that is a UDFA in his second season coming off of a major injury. I mean, like, I don't know that that's the guy that I would be pinning all my hopes on to turn this defense around. So should it help? Yeah. Do they have the players? They do not. So like Aaron needs to understand that he doesn't have those guys right now and stop forcing it. And in the off season, or maybe via trade or something, they need to go out and just continue to build up the talent level across the roster. But like ultimately this comes down, like ultimately if you have talented players, you should be able to bring in coaches that coach them. Like the difficult part there is getting the talented players.
Yeah. And I think this is one of those things where it takes a certain amount of repetitions before you can really see where trends are. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to what your players can and can't do, like you're not going to know that in one game or 2 games or 3 games. But now that they're at that 4 and 5 game mark, I think you're right. It is something where he should have this critical mass of data of like, all right, what can we do? What can't we do? What are our guys doing? And hopefully coming out of the bye week, we can see some changes to our defensive scheming and maybe be a little bit more effective with what we've got. Because again, we're the I think the youngest squad or roster in the NFL.
We're right up there.
So,
but like, this is what you see this in college all the time. Like a team like Wake Forest or I'm sorry, Georgia Tech or like BYU, or what is it, Air Force, like they can't get the same level of talent that like a USC or an Alabama can get, right? So they have to make up for it with scheme to overcome the talent deficiency. So like the Lions compared to the rest of the NFL have a talent deficiency. If they're going to overcome that with their current amount of talent, it has to come from their scheme.
Yeah.
So if you don't change it, you're only going to net the same results. So he has to be able to adjust in season to injuries, player movement, whatever the hell else, happens. And then Brad Holmes' job is to go out and get him better players, so I've been drafting like Keely Ringo, cornerback from Georgia, quite a bit, as the Lions' first round pick. Now I'm picking at 8 and they're slated to pick at 3 right now. But like, I mean, like, I honestly believe that if right now, if the draft were today, the Lions would be picking 3rd. And
we're going to get to what we were drafting.
Sure. But like, I think I would probably take a defensive player over a quarterback at this point. It's that far away. So,
well, so I'm going to skip to
do whatever you need to, Mike.
I'm going to skip around because the other question that we had was if we can get Stroud or Bryce Young in the first, do we jump on it? Whereas Goff's shown he can command our offense enough, and we need to really focus solely on defense. So, like, it sounds like you're actually leaning towards getting some more defensive help at number 3 instead of grabbing a Stroud or Young.
So the question is how best to use this team's resources to improve the roster and therefore the record.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's really 2 thoughts. So I've been exploring what I'll call thought 1, which is just draft defensive players, right? Like pull a page from what the Panthers did 3-4 years ago and just go primarily all in on defense, So like a Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter, a Keely Ringo, a Joey Porter, somebody that's going to come in and shore up a spot on the defense that's lacking. The other thought is that you go with the future signal caller and you take the money that you would save paying Jared Goff and you spend that money on veterans in free agency to shore up the defense, right? So this is another valid, method for improving the team. And the question is, which one do you think is better? And like, I just happen to look at the NFL draft and this year and next year, and I think like I would rather have Jalen Carter and like Quinn Ewers or like Caleb Williams from USC as opposed to like CJ Stroud and a top-notch defensive talent in the 2024 draft. So like the Lions right now are on a spectrum, right? And their offense is way over here and it's doing really well. And their defense is way over here and it's doing really poorly. So like if you have a great offense, like let's just keep that there, but like let's bring the defense to there. That's all I'm saying. And I am not a fan of Jared Goff. But like this team has needs outside of quarterback that should be addressed. Like they are losing most of their running back stable. They will have no offensive line depth. The defensive backs we have almost none under contract. Like they're losing most of their linebacker crew, all this other stuff. And I would rather go in and say, we're going to take a backup quarterback in the 4th round that we have under contract for 4 years, or like, we're going to pick up, a running back here and a linebacker there and like a starting corner and then a defensive tackle, and we're going to put more resources into improving the absolute worst part of this team because the offense, when healthy, has indicated that they can play at a level up there with the best teams in the NFL, right? So, but like I think that they don't get shut out if DeAndre Swift is on the field, in New England. I don't think that, or like Amon-Ra St. Brown took about half the offensive snaps. Like they're just beat to shit. I mean, like I don't know what anybody expects.
So like my thought on that is one of two things I think we can do. We have 2 first-round draft choices, and the way that the Rams are going right now, it may be a mid first round. They have not played particularly well, and they have the hardest record in the NFL. So that doesn't necessarily bode well for them for their last dozen games or whatever.
Nope.
So we can either go with a top defensive, maybe another edge rusher to be on the other pillar from Hutch. Maybe a top cornerback, something with our top 5 overall pick. And then if we're drafting in that 17 to 20 range, maybe we can get a guy like a Will Levis who would probably still be around there. Or we do the complete opposite and we go with a Bryce Young or CJ Stroud and then take like the best edge rusher or something along those lines at that 17 to 20.
Can I make fun of Asics for real quick?
Absolutely.
So Asics, what if the best player?
God, man.
One of the best player available is a tackle. You take that guy? What if the best player available is a wide receiver? You take the wide receiver, you take the tackle. What if it's a center? Do you take him then? Best player available doesn't mean anything. It's a useless term. So what you mean is best player available at a position that could help the team. So is it a punter? We need a kicker. We're not kicking very well. What if that's the best player available? What if it's Sebastian Janikowski 2.0? Best player available is not a draft strategy. It is something that NFL pundits have said that is largely been disproven. Right. So like Funky says that at a position of need. Okay, well, what's the position of need? Yeah. Like define that. So like the good thing about like the top 5 positions of value in the NFL is that it's already been defined. So like if you want to take a best player available approach, you should naturally want to take one of the top 5 positions in the NFL: quarterback, wide receiver, tackle, edge, cornerback. So of those, what do you need? Right? Quarterback's debatable, not tackle, not wide receiver. Corner, edge is debatable. So like cornerback is the only one on the entire roster that is like, this is the one that you absolutely must have because you don't have anybody. And so like he said, like, what if they had taken Chase Young, which they couldn't because he got picked before they had their pick, and Sauce Gardner. And Sauce Gardner is probably going to be the defensive rookie of the year. It's hard to say that wouldn't have been a great pickup. But like, I don't know what Sauce Gardner looks like in 2 years. Is he still good? I hope so. Probably.
Yeah.
But like the Lions very clearly said, we want Aiden Hutchinson on this team. So we're just going to have to hope that he works out.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I have with our offense right now was I know it's lauded for being, up until this last week when we got shut out, the number 1 offense, the highest scoring offense in the league. That's true. That's a factual statement, or it was up until we got shut out.
Mm-hmm.
We overperformed, and we were playing against very poor competition, with the exception of the Eagles.
Well, Vikings are also a pretty great record.
They're okay, but their defense is nothing special.
Record's a record.
I mean, they've got a better record than we do, for sure.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we have the 5th easiest schedule. We had the 5th easiest schedule.
That's all gone now. Yeah.
We got the 3rd hardest remaining schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But
so that should also be pointed out. Like that 5th hardest schedule number is based on last year's record.
Yes.
and the 8th hardest remaining or whatever it is
It's
based on what's happening this year. It's not the same thing.
I know.
I mean, I'm not ragging on you, but like those things sound like the same thing, and they are not the same thing.
Yeah, we went into the season with the 5th easiest schedule based on their performances last year. But what we've got left based on how they've done so far is a whole bunch of people over 500 and doing well. So that does not look good for us. I don't think our offense is that great. I think Hawkinson had one game that he looked like a world beater in 4 games where he was completely invisible.
We lost that game.
What's that?
We lost that game.
And we did, yes. Swift, I think, is a good running back if he could stay healthy, which he's never been able to do.
Correct.
Amon-Ra St. Brown he was a quality find, and he is a very good starting quality wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Chark has been mediocre at best. Everybody else,
I don't know what's going on with him.
I don't know either. It's like Allen Robinson in LA, like they just disappeared. And I think we overperformed. I don't say we got lucky because they're professional football players that put a lot of time and effort into what they do. But at the same time, I don't think that we are a 35 points a game offense. We just don't have that. I just don't think we're that good. So that's why I would actually lean toward Stroud or Bryce Young, because it looks like our offense is like way over here on the amazing side. I think we are much closer to the 0 point offense than we are a 38 point offense.
Okay, so that's a decent take. My take on this group is, when healthy, it's an above average offense in the NFL. So I don't know that I would say they're closer to the 0 as to the 38, but I would say I would expect this team to be able to win games with their offense if the defense was competent. And so, like, when I say the defense is competent, what I mean is that, like, you can hold a team to a field goal attempt in the red zone, like, basically, and not just
we haven't been able to do that yet.
Force a punt, for Christ's sake, like something. But like, to me, and like where I would agree with you, Mike, is if Jared Goff can manufacture what they're doing so far this season, I don't see any reason why a more talented quarterback couldn't take the same group of players to an even higher level. Right. So like going and getting a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young or whomever it might be there, or trading for a Lamar Jackson, or no, just kidding. But like whomever it might be, I think that I think that it would be very obvious the limitations that Jared Goff has placed on this roster with his wobble balls and his inability to do a decent Kyler Murray impression when trying to get away from pressure. So like, there's a lot of options available to the Detroit Lions to try and get better. I'm interested in seeing which ones they will take. So, and we can hypothesize all we want. That's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, and to A6's points, like I disagree with you. Closer to 0 than 35. Okay, that 0 is, maybe a little bit hyperbole.
It's the complete end of the spectrum, right? No one expects it to be 0.
Yeah, I think we are a bottom half offense that grossly overperformed. Not that I think that we were more likely to put up goose eggs than 35, but I just think we're bottom half, and I don't think that we're going to get any better by keeping Goff around. But at the same time, we need defensive help. So we are so bereft of talent, and I'm not sure I want to spend $30 million of it keeping Goff around.
I don't.
Right? So that's why I'm leaning toward Stroud or Young, and then going defense with our next, with the Rams first round pick.
I mean, in a lot of the mocks I've been doing, it's been like defense, like backup quarterback. So, most of my picks in the mock drafts that I've been doing, whether it's 3 or 7 rounds, have been basically defensive players. Like they just, even if it's not a starter, it's like you need a backup. So. Yeah. Anyways, what's the next question, Mike?
Next question. This is a fun one.
Is it?
Of the Lions, Tigers, and Red Wings, which team do we think will be the next one? And this is the key part, to advance past the first round of the playoffs.
This is a very easy question. It's the Red Wings.
It's the Red Wings.
And I don't know that we need to go into any more depth.
Is it because you have to not just get to the playoffs, but advance? Is that why it's going to be the Red Wings?
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's been 31 years for the Lions. I mean, like,
yeah, but past history does not necessarily bear anything to do with the future. Otherwise, the Cubs would still be without a World Series.
well,
right?
no, so here I'll push back a little bit, right? So, like, your past does indicate to me several things that you should learn from your past, right? So, like, the Cubs did when they hired Theo Epstein from Boston in order to start their rebuild, and he tore that thing down to the studs and built it through the draft and made a lot of very smart and intelligent roster moves.
Right.
And then you need a lot of good coaching and a lot of luck and a lot of other shit to go your way in order to be a champion.
Right.
And it's not 100% in your control. And so they ended up getting one. But, like, much like the Lions, the Cubs were poorly managed for 100 years. So, like, it's like, I don't think that the Lions are being poorly managed anymore. Like, I think the one thing that I think there's two things outside of their control that they're working on, and that's injury status and, like, overall experience, top to bottom in the organization. And those are going to get fixed. And, like, okay, so first of all, let's knock this shit off about the OSU quarterback nonsense. We're not scouting the helmet here. We're scouting the prospect.
Right.
And, like, CJ Stroud is a fantastic quarterback prospect. I don't care what school he went to. Like, no one thinks that Josh Allen was a bad prospect because he went to Wyoming, right? A school that plays nobody and got their asses handed to them in whatever conference they play in for however long he was there. But, like, you see traits in a player, and then you make some kind of speculation as to how well those traits will translate to the NFL game. And so if we were to take the, like, OSU quarterback narrative, or, like, linebacker U or DBU or wide receiver U or running back U or whatever all that nonsense in college is, we would never find players outside of those programs that could play at most positions in the NFL. So I don't give a shit about the OSU quarterback thing. I think that's a ridiculous narrative that's largely perpetuated because people either hate Ohio State, which I completely understand because I hate their guts.
Right.
But, like, if the Detroit Lions are going to draft somebody from Notre Dame or Ohio State and that player is going to help the Detroit Lions win, I don't give a shit where you went to college.
Right.
And you're not going to not help them just because you went to Notre Dame or Ohio State.
Agree with all that. Back on this question, though. I do think it's probably the Red Wings, but I do also think that it's a lot harder to win in the playoffs in hockey than it is in football.
I'll bet $1,000 right now that it's the Red Wings. I will bet you $1,000 right now.
I'm not going to take that bet because
you get two teams. You get the Lions and the Tigers. I'll get you have way more chances. $1,000
as well. I don't know why that
you get the Tigers too, buddy. I'll even give you the Pistons. But it's the Red Wings, and it's not close.
Can I get U of M in the whole playoffs thing?
No, you cannot, because
they're
moving to a 12-team playoff in a couple of years.
But yeah, it is so much harder to win a series in hockey because you in football you can get lucky. You can have a bad break or a good break, but you need four. You need to win 4 of those in hockey.
It's harder for me to win then. So this is just a reason you should be taking this bet.
That said, I mean, there's a reason why I have all this stuff here, right?
Right.
I do think it's probably the Red Wings, but I don't necessarily think it's a sure thing. We are really bad. We have been lottery pick bad for the last couple of years. Now, I do believe the Red Wings have a very good GM, Steve Yzerman, and he's making good choices. Much like I think Holmes is making good choices. We have a brand new coach. We fired our last coach. I don't know how good this guy's going to be. He was an assistant for Tampa Bay when they won the Stanley Cup.
Should take this bet.
So that seems pretty good.
Should take this bet, Mike.
If it wasn't 1,000, if it was $20, I might take it.
I'll bet you $20 right now.
$20. All right.
We'll write it down, date it, and sign it at some point.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got the Red Wings. I've got a Lions, Tigers, or Pistons.
Lions, Tigers, or Pistons. Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the next question?
You probably just made yourself $20, but
or we just steak dinners.
Sure thing is that you do. I think that
we used to do steak dinners for bets. We could do that again.
It's true. So, all right. What else we have here?
You tell me, buddy.
We've hit most of our mailbag questions. One of the things that we want to kind of talk about at some point was second contract watch.
Sure.
A third of the way through the season, we're at the bye week. Where are we on Hawkinson, Swift, and Okuda? So I guess we'll start with Hawk. He had a great game once where we lost.
So here's where I'll say we are on Hawk. Georgia has a tight end named Darnell Washington that is just the biggest human being I've ever seen in my entire life. He's so big. He's like 6'7", 260, runs like he's a wide receiver. He has this sick catch this week where he basically like one hands it over his shoulder. The commentator asked if Georgia was playing with a youth football. That's how big he is. It's disgusting. So like the reason I'm so infatuated with this guy is it's like if you put him out there and gave him Hawk snaps, you're playing with a 6 offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Who's like, oh, this time he's not just going to destroy your edge rusher. He's going to run out into the flat. And there is no linebacker or safety that is big enough to guard this guy. None. And if Goff didn't throw such a duck for a pass every time the ball travels more than 4 yards,
laugh.
I'm sorry, I'm extremely funny. So yeah. But if you drafted CJ Stroud and then added Darnell Washington, and CJ Stroud could hit a fly at 50 yards. The guy's amazing with his ball placement. But he could put that in spots where other players simply cannot get. Darnell Washington, dude, go look him up. You will not be able to miss who he is on the field. He is the largest player on the field in SEC games every time. He's disgustingly big. It's so cool. His hands must be like hubcaps. It's ridiculous. So
7'2",
yeah, and he moves like a wide receiver. It's gross. He's truly a hybrid offensive tackle tight end. I'm just obsessed with thinking up things to do with him because Ben Johnson really likes this pulling offensive scheme to create mismatches in the running game. That's why they're hitting on so many of these big plays in the running game. And this is a guy who's athletic enough to move and big enough to block on the move in space. Adding a guy like this to the team, and TJ Hawkinson for his size can simply not block in the running game. He could chip, that's fine. But he cannot block effectively in the running game. That's been proven over his time here in Detroit. And he's One Pride, and he's simply not good enough. At this point, yeah, this is who this guy is. This guy, he looks like a high schooler playing with pee-wee players. He's so gross. Look how big he is.
Look how big this guy is.
Look how big this guy is. I mean,
oh my gosh.
Look at that guy, dude. How is that quarterback supposed to tackle that guy? Look. He's so big. Those are SEC players. Those are some of the best players in college football. He is an absolute matchup nightmare. Right?
Where is he expected to go?
Second round.
Second round?
Top of the second.
We've got a pick at the top of the second.
Yeah, we do.
As it turns out.
I don't want to use that pick on a guy like this, unfortunately, when Hawkinson is still under contract, right? So like they drafted James Mitchell, who we haven't seen much of this year. I don't want to take a guy. I mean, like Hutchinson could still realistically be on this team for 2 more seasons. You know, you could get like, oh my God, Brock Bowers is an absolute freak. Like the amount of talent between Eric Gilbert, Darnell Washington, and Brock Bowers that Georgia has in its tight end room is literally better than most NFL franchises. Yeah, Brock Bowers is a top 5 pick whenever he decides he wants to come out. He's an absolute nightmare. But like this guy's fun, and I would love to have this guy on the Lions, but it's probably not going to happen because they have so many other places that are more important to invest their resources in than tight end. But like the things that you could do with this guy are just insane. So
if we let Hawk walk, though,
sure.
Do you take him at the top of the second?
But we're not letting Hawk walk after this season.
You don't think so?
Well, they picked up his 5th-year option, so he's on the team next year.
Oh, well, that's true. That's true.
So, and then to be honest, after that, the tight end transition and franchise tags are so cheap that it almost makes financial sense for them to at least tag him once. So, like, he's probably going to be on the team for 6 seasons.
Yeah.
I would not re-sign him to a contract at this point. Like, he is not consistent enough with whatever they are asking him to do. So, like, either get a player in at a more reasonable resource to do what they are asking Hawkinson to do and have him perform to the same level, or change up what you're doing and go get a Brock Bowers or a Darnell Washington or player X at some point in the future. I don't know who that guy is. I just know that for what we are paying Hawkinson today, he's not worth that money.
Yeah. So Swift, we have not gotten to the 5th-year option. Actually, do we have an option for a 5th year with him?
No, he's a 2nd-round pick.
Yes,
Hendon Hooker is going to be a 25-year-old quarterback when he is drafted. One pride, like by the time he is done with his rookie contract, he will be 30 years old. So, sorry, but I'm not drafting a quarterback who, at this point into his development, is finally showing promise. His development and Josh Allen's almost mirror each other, and he is still in college. Like, he's doing a nice job at Tennessee. Congrats. I'm proud of him. I don't want him. He's 25 years old. Will Levis is going to be 24 years old. Like, that's one of the big selling points on Stroud and Young is that they're still fucking kids. They're not like adults. Like, Hendon Hooker is 3 years removed from CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
And like CJ Stroud has played better. Like, Hendon Hooker is going to be a 1st-round pick. And just like I don't think there's anything wrong, quote unquote, with Hendon Hooker. But like, some team is going to draft him in the 1st round, and I'm going to be like, whoever that team is, you just made a fucking mistake. Not because he might not be good, but because his career is already shorter than everybody else because he's basically been in college for 6 years.
Yeah.
I mean, and like, I could be wrong, right? Tom Brady's 45 and he's still playing football at a pretty high level, right? Hendon Hooker might be a late bloomer and be awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm wrong, though. Like, history sides with this has not happened much, you know? So I'm just playing the numbers. No, it's not Hawk's fault.
Yeah. So the question is Hawk's fault? Goff is off target, bad with him, and that Ben isn't scheming the game for him like they do for Kelsey down in KC.
But he's okay. So like the scheming the game question, like he's not good enough for them to scheme the game around. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, like he had a fantastic game against who was it? Not Minnesota. Who was the game for before New England?
I don't remember. Why are you asking me these things?
Because I don't remember. So it was Philly, Washington, Minnesota, and who did we play 4th? Anybody?
Bueller.
The one team
I'm failing. So we had Philly, Washington, Minnesota, Seattle, New England.
Seattle, right? It was the Seattle game. He just went crazy.
Yep.
So like, but to be honest, one of those if you take a look at like his stats, like he had an 81 or an 84 yard reception. He didn't score on it, but he got inside the 5.
Yeah.
So like if you subtract one catch and 80 yards from his day, I mean, it's still great.
Yeah.
But like it looks a lot worse than what he did, you know. And like if he was something like toward Funky's point, like if he was something like 4, 5, 6 catches for like 50, 60, 70 yards and a touchdown every third game, I'd be a lot more open to signing him to another contract, but he's not that guy.
Yeah.
So, you know, like the 3 best tight ends in football are George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and Mark Andrews in some order. And then there is a drop off, like jumping off of a cliff. And then you're talking about Kyle Pitts, TJ Hawkinson at some point, Darren Waller, these other guys, you know. And like, okay, so like if say TJ Hawkinson is 4th, that's still this, you know, like I don't care. And like if you're gonna pay him like he's the number 4 tight end in football and put him up here as far as his contract is concerned and his production is here, I don't give a shit. You know, so like if they say they had a better quarterback, say they had Matthew Stafford, right? Let's say they had Matthew Stafford back on this team and he's throwing a nice ball and they're scheming up for him or whatever. Like, show me the point in history where TJ Hawkinson has been like a reliable go-to like pass catching threat for the Detroit Lions, and I'll give him a second contract because he hasn't done it. You know, and like if he has like a couple big games a year, like those are great, but like those need to be wins.
Yeah, and like, you know, Funky did mention that they did change a little bit how their offense ran scheme wise that game, but I don't think it was they schemed for Hawkinson. They schemed because that was what they, you know, watching tape. Not that it's ever on tape anymore, but watching video recordings of the opponent. They kind of saw how they could take advantage of that, and that was those quick, you know, tight end outs and that kind of stuff. And if the defense isn't just going to give that to us, he's completely invisible.
So Funky makes a point here, and he says, and again, who has ever said Hawk wants to set the market? Please tell me where I can find this info. Okay, so like David Njoku just got north of $14 million. If you're TJ Hawkinson, are you going to say I'm willing to take less than David Njoku, who's done even less than TJ Hawkinson has? I would think not. You know, like, and TJ Hawkinson's argument's going to be I was a top 10 pick. I've been with this roster through thick and thin. Like, I've had some monster games. Like, I've, you know, I've got all this potential, blah, 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 you know, all this kind of stuff. Like, why would he not ask for top 5 tight end money? And if you're going to get top 5 tight end money, you're talking something like $13 to $15 million a year. Fun fact, says Shannon, incoming.
Oh Lord.
So like,
Chaos Monkey's back at it.
Yeah. See, Shannon, this is what that term means, was what you're doing right now. Are you getting it? Are you getting it? But like, if Funky, to your point, like if Hawkinson comes in and his agent sits down with Brad Holmes and says, we want 4 years, $6 million a year. Cool. You can be a part of the Detroit Lions for fucking ever.
Right.
But like, I do not want him on the team if it's going to be 10 plus, like, and like, to be honest, if you're TJ Hawkinson and you want to get in a contract you're going to be able to cash in on, you know, you're going to want more than what your rookie contract paid you. And his rookie let me look this up while I'm talking, but like his rookie contract paying him like $9 million this year because he made a goddamn Pro Bowl. So like, I think that he's going to end up happening is he's going to ask for more than his rookie deal, you know, which is at around $9 or $10 million. He is making, oh, I'm wrong, 6.5 this year.
Yeah, but what about next year?
Okay, I'm looking. 9.3.
Yeah.
So like, if that is not his baseline, then I'd be shocked. But like, he's not worth $6 million this year. I mean, do you want to pay? What would you pay for what he's done? Because I would maintain I could draft a dude in the 4th round that could do what he's done. I mean, like the Cardinals took a dude from like Colorado State in like the 3rd round this year, and they're not even playing him. And I would rather do something like that than like re-sign TJ Hawkinson because it's just cheaper.
Jesus. See, this is why I love her. The Avengers had a 1 in 14,605 chance of defeating Thanos, which means they were 57,140 times more likely to win against the universe's greatest threat than the Lions.
And if we could sign Thanos to a contract to play middle linebacker for the Detroit Lions, I would do it. Infinity Stones or no, like he was pretty good with just that like weird sword that he had. 1 in 800 trillion. That's pretty cool.
Swift.
Yeah.
What do we do?
I love him. I this year when he has played, I think he's been worth a second contract. The problem is he hasn't played every game. So regardless, I think that I would probably offer him a second contract, but it's going to be something like 5.5 a year. So maybe
it's double 20, now.
22 over 4, something like that, with like 12 guaranteed. And I would be drafting other guys to replace Craig Reynolds, and Williams.
Man, I don't know. Williams has played really well, and he's not that expensive.
Well, he's the most expensive running back on the roster right this year at like over $3 million.
Sure. He's also been as productive as Swift almost.
He has played in 2 less games. Yeah. So like, I
mean,
mean,
like, you know, it's not like he's a scrub.
He's not a scrub, but like we are paying Amon-Ra St. Brown $5 million for 4 seasons worth of play.
I know.
And like, if you can't get a running back to like a productive running back on a rookie deal to do something like that, then fine. But like, you're going to have to free up millions of dollars in 1s and 2. Like the Lions are $2 million under the cap this year and are missing out on opportunities to go and acquire new players because they don't have the space. And like, this starts with the fact that you're paying Josh Reynolds as much as you are paying DJ Chark. It matters that like Jamal Williams is your number 2 back, yet you're paying him more than anybody else in that running back room. This shit matters, you know. And like, I don't think that he's worth $3 million, to be honest, because I think that you can find what he does for less. I like him. I mean, he's a good locker room guy, and if you want to retain him for $1.5 million a year, neat. But like, if I was Jamal Williams, I wouldn't accept that, and I would go to another team.
Yeah.
Like, and there's no reason like someone online the other day said that like we need to get Jason Kabinda back so that we can really open up the offense. I just like went off on the guy, and I'm like, ooh, a fullback. Is he Kyle Juszczyk? Because I don't think that he is. You know, like that we're paying Jason Kabinda $2.5 million this year to be a fullback, and I'm like, your 3rd tight end should have that role.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a position that you need on. Like, save the money, open a roster spot.
Skoranek is doing for LA, and he's
right
out.
Like, you should get creative with some of this stuff.
Yeah. The last guy on our contract, our second contract watch, is Okudah.
So funky. Michael Carter for the Jets was a 3rd round pick last year, and he's a starting. Like Javonte Williams, same thing in Denver. He got hurt, but like, yes, you can absolutely find tight ends and running backs in the mid round. Teams do it all the time. You know, all the time. It's not a reach. It's the reality of what the draft is. You know, and it's like, I mean, I just don't think that people have understood for a long time that like you don't have to. Right, Jameson Williams opens up the offense like that. That's a decent take. You know, not Kabinda. You know, so like the problem the Lions have had, and when I say Lions, I mean the organization over like multiple GMs has had, is that they have made poor draft decisions based on position and then overpaid because they had to make up for the lack of talent because they missed on so many draft picks. So just start drafting the right positions in the right spots. So in the 1st round, quarterbacks, running, you know, tackles, quarterbacks, and edge rushers. 1st and 2nd round, get your wide receivers and your cornerbacks. And then everything else ends up being a mid-round pick.
So just to throw this out there, Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
third round choice.
Oh yeah, no, like George Kittle is a 5th round choice.
5th round choice.
Yeah, Darren Waller.
Yep, Darren Waller is a 6th round choice.
Yeah, the whole fucking position,
Mark,
the only ones
was a third
round pick. Yeah, like the only tight ends that are picked in the top 10 that are playing in the NFL right now are T.J. Hockenson, who was taken at 8th, and Kyle Pitts, who was taken at 4, who's the highest tight end who's ever been drafted in the common era.
Yeah,
and like he's more of a wide receiver than he is a tight end, but like it says TE in front of his position, so it's like right. And like to Funky's point, like he says, and he's kind of, I think he's being a little bit sarcastic here, but he says, if you could always do it, why has there ever been a reason to pay any of them? Right. That's the point. Is that a lot of these of these positions should be turned over so much more than they are. Like running back, you should just turn them over. Like I'm sorry, but like when DeAndre Swift, like up until this season, like I would have just let him walk and just draft another guy in like the 2nd or 3rd round, because you can look at this line. I mean, you think if they drafted Blake Corum or somebody, or like someone from MSU or someone from an SEC school or whatever, like Tank Bigsby or Deuce Vaughn from Kansas State, that they can't run behind this offensive line, you just don't need to invest heavily in these positions.
There's some of them that are going in late 2nd round as I'm looking, like Freiermuth with the Steelers went 55th overall, which was 2nd round.
It's just the difference of 47 picks.
Yeah. So, but yeah, to your point, that's why you see so many new names up here. That's why you get a couple. You get your studs, you get your elite guys that are going to be future Hall of Famers. You'll find your Kelseys and Kittles out there. Mm-hmm. Andrews has an outside shot, I think, at making a Hall of Fame if he keeps doing what he's doing.
He's been amazing the last 2 years.
Yep. But that's why when you look at the rest of like the top 15, you see guys like Dalton Schultz and Hunter Henry and Pat Freiermuth and Darren Waller. And all these guys are relatively young. Why? Because you can draft them in those mid rounds, get good quality out of them, let them walk, and maybe get a 2nd contract somewhere else for whatever money, right. Or they just don't get the big contracts and they get backup contracts.
Yeah, to Funky made another point here, and he says, again, how does that any apply to a guy who's already in the league? Yeah. So this is how.
Yeah.
If a guy is up for a new contract, like a Jamal Williams or like a Craig Reynolds, and I can go out and I can get a guy on a 4-year deal that is effectively worth what we are paying Jamal Williams for a 1-year deal, then the way that I look at that is I'm getting 3 years for free. And so like it's just not, I don't think it's difficult to find a guy in the draft that can do what Jamal Williams does production wise. Like he has other value as like a teammate and a human being that like you might not be able to find in the draft, but those are not quantifiable and therefore not things I'm going to discuss.
Yeah. And then the last guy that we had on our 2nd contract watch is Okudah. And I know we got a little bit of time left with him because this is his 3rd year, right?
Yep.
Injury filled seasons. Where are we landing on, next year, assuming health and continued,
So if he plays something like 11, 12 plus games this year and he maintains his level of production, I think you have to pick up his 5th year option. I would be surprised if they didn't. And then in 2024, heading into the 2025 offseason, I think that you could look to re-sign him, but like I probably wouldn't, unless he makes a big leap, which is possible. I probably wouldn't want to re-sign him for a lot more than what he's currently making. He's like the 3rd or 4th highest paid player on the team.
Yep,
because he was the number 3 overall pick like 3 years ago. So, I mean, he has been hurt so much it's hard to evaluate him. That's the problem. So like this is really like, you could argue in a lot of ways this is rookie season.
Yeah, it was very similar to the way that Stafford's career began in Detroit, right? He got hurt and then he got hurt, and really kind of that 3rd year was kind of like his rookie year.
Yeah.
He actually got to finish it through, and everybody thought he was going to be just a glass cannon. And hopefully Okuda comes back the same way Stafford did. And I mean, Stafford was kind of an Iron Man for a decade, never missed a game.
Yeah.
Hopefully Okuda can come back and have similar health and success, for that matter, like production success.
It sounds like he's doing everything that you would expect someone who really wants to be successful would do. Like he came into the season with like being in the best shape of his life, and like he put some stuff out on Twitter of him working out, and like it is hard to argue that a guy that looks like that is not in fantastic shape, you know. And so like I think that he's getting the reps now that you need to develop as on-field talent. So I am hopeful that like you are going to see like a continuing like upward arrow as far as like him trending and developing as a player. I would hope so, just because he was such a high draft pick that it's beneficial to the Lions not to have to let someone like that go. I'm hopeful, you know, and like he's, you know, through 5 games or whatever, like I think that he's taking advantage of that opportunity. Now, like this is largely just based upon like what I have seen in his stat line. You know, PFF says that he's effectively just your kind of your average starter, you know, and so based upon like how he has played, you know, he's not Darius Slay by any stretch, you know. So,
right.
You know, but like they're going to have to add to their back 7 pretty significantly this offseason, or you're going to get the same results, you know, in 2023. So,
excuse me. So the only other thing that I had that I wanted to kind of cover, I know we're already at about the hour 20 mark, is where we're at with the season, what we expect for the second half after the bye.
So I expect them to lose their next 3 games. I think Dallas, Miami, and whatever the third game. Do you still have the schedule up on your computer? But like they go.
It goes Dallas, at home against Miami, at home against Green Bay, and then week 10 will be in Chicago.
So I think the Chicago game is realistically the next win that we're looking at. Dallas, I don't like that Dak Prescott's coming back because it opens up their playbook for so many additional things. I would rather play Cooper Rush and a limited playbook that they've put on tape through like the last 4 weeks of the season, as opposed to Dak Prescott with their complete playbook. And I think that's going to be a problem for them. Miami, I just think that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are going to absolutely destroy the secondary. I don't even know that it matters who they are playing at quarterback, whether it's Tua or Teddy Bridgewater or whoever it is. Like, I don't think that they have the guys, even if they're practicing with one another for, you know, the bye week and the 2 weeks, like between this and the Dolphins game. But like, I just don't think they can hang with those 2 guys. And like, and then Green Bay, you know, I think the narrative is going to be like, hey, we beat them last year. Yeah, you beat them last year and a half when they only played their starters in the first half. You know, like, cool. I don't give very much credence to that win. It goes down in the stat column as a win, but like, you didn't play Aaron Rodgers the whole game. You didn't play Devonta Adams the whole game.
But we did beat them the half that they played also. So
okay, neat. I mean, like,
saying, it's not like they beat us. They got up at halftime, they pulled their guys, and then we came back. Like, we did kind of kick their ass.
Okay, and like when they do it and they're playing the Packers at full strength with their starters in, I'll give them some credit the next year on the schedule. But like, they didn't do that. You know, they do have them at home. So
the interesting thing is the Packers have not played well this year at all.
Sure, that's true.
That Aaron Rodgers looks mediocre. They lost Devonta Adams, who also looks mediocre over in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets beat the shit out of them, and that was not something I would have expected.
Yeah, so like
their schedule though, like I remember when we went through early on, we kind of called Cowboys a loss, and I think we kind of decided Miami was probably a loss, but maybe we could pull it out. But they've really surprised this year and played really, really well.
Yep.
The Packers, I think we called that a loss. The Bears, we were wondering if they were going to win more than 2 games all season, and they're what, 3-3? Maybe they're
Night Funky. I think they're 2-4.
2-4. The Giants, we figured we would beat them, and they're damn near undefeated. They're 5-1. Like, where the hell did that come from? So that's a game that I thought we were going to win. That just doesn't look winnable right now.
It does
not. Buffalo is certainly not winnable. I'm not sure anybody is going
to
lose.
I will say Buffalo did lose to the Jags last year, like in the Josh Allen Bowl.
True.
So, like, I don't know, but like it certainly doesn't feel like it's a winnable game, right?
Yeah. Jacksonville, I think we called that one a win for us, but they've actually played they've played as good as we have. So I think that's a little closer to a 50-50.
Winnable game, and it's at home. Yeah.
Yep. But it's not a sure thing. Like, I went into this season thinking it was going to be a sure thing.
Right.
Vikings, probably a loss. The Jets, I thought early in the season would probably be a sure win, and they're also 5-1 or 4-2 or something crazy.
I think they're 5-1.
Carolina, I thought we would probably win, but they're, I think, at least 3-3. So I don't know. Like,
Carolina is 1-5.
Oh, are they? Okay.
They fired their coach, and like that's right. The game that is as winnable as any other on the remaining schedule. So.
Yep, I was thinking of a different team. You're right. So like that's a winnable game. I think both of the Bears games are winnable.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure about any of the others. Jacksonville is winnable.
So of the remaining of the games we talked about, if they win Jacksonville, both Bear games, in Carolina, they're 5-12.
Yeah.
And that would be 1 win under what I had hoped for this team.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be too upset about it, to be honest. I mean, it's also more wins than they had last year. Now you're going to have to go out and play all these games. Now there's every possibility that the teams that we play have an injury or fuck up or overlook the Lions or something, or
maybe we split with the Vikings or split with the Packers.
You know, like that's the thing. Like the Vikings game was a loss, and yeah, they look good, but like that was an immensely close game that basically came down to a busted coverage on our part to win it for them.
Yeah.
So, you know, and like the Jets is the Jets game in New York or is it in? Yeah. Okay. So like, I think that the Jets are a beatable team. I mean, are they playing well? Yeah, they are. You know, but like I think it's still a winnable game. You know, but I would, if I'm putting money on these teams, on the Lions to win games, it's against the Bears twice, Carolina, and Jacksonville, and those are some of the worst teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
So,
but we're better than they are, hopefully.
Right.
So,
I mean, and like I don't know that this team is all that far away from winning a lot of these one-score contests, but like it's still another offseason away.
Yeah.
Or it's something like Josh Pascal comes back, Jerry Jacobs comes back, John Comiskey comes back, and it's like, you know, putting a little turbo boost, turning into a pumpkin gunfight, guys.
I think it's supposed to say good night. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
All right. Night, Shan.
You're awesome. Chaos
Monkey.
Yeah. Yep. But you know, like it would be cool if like you added a couple of these pieces and it took off, you know. I think the biggest problem for the Lions this year has been Amani Araraway and Mike Hughes have been absolutely atrocious in the secondary. I think that's the biggest problem that this team has faced.
Yeah, it's just surprising how far of a step Araraway has taken back. Was not expecting that, to be honest.
No, and it's a huge problem. It's been you went into the season hoping that you had at least a pair of like starting caliber corners, which would have caused opposing offenses problems, right?
Yeah.
But like it's just not happening. And like if that had happened and Jerry Jeudy comes back, then you can play him on the team's third best option, you know, and now he's going to have to take the second best option, and like all these, and you know, and if Tracy Walker hadn't gotten hurt, now you don't need to play Corey Joseph starter snaps and all this other shit.
Yeah.
And like this is the problem. Like the depth is getting better, but the depth is not at a place where it can overcome the talent disparity. So
yeah, one of the when people are asking like what is the problem with our defense, I think part of it, why are we 1-5 or 1-4,
mm-hmm.
1-5,
1-4, Mike. It's a
1-4. Obviously it's the defense. And what about it? I think the biggest reason that we've lost most of those games is the step back that Oruwariye has taken.
It's a huge portion of it.
It's a huge portion of what has gone wrong with our. I mean, injuries are a big piece of it as well. Like I don't want to take away, throw everything at AO, but like injuries were a big piece of it. But he has taken such a big step back that has been many yards, many third down conversions, fourth down conversions, big plays that shouldn't have happened and wouldn't have last year if he would have been playing like he was last year. So that's a big piece.
Like he is literally ranked the last cornerback in the NFL per PFF grading. I mean, like of everybody who has played enough snaps to be considered a cornerback this season, he's the worst of all of them. So that's just amazing. So, I mean, based upon how he played, he had like 6 picks last year. Like he played well.
Yeah.
And like all that's, I mean, like in for what? Like what changed? It's the same coaching staff. It's the same player. I really don't think he's healthy.
Yeah, I think that's got to be part of it. And we haven't changed the scheme a whole lot either. So, like, I think it's got to be partially health. And I don't know, maybe last year, did he play kind of above his capabilities?
Probably. It looks like it.
So, all right, buddy. My throat's getting sore.
Yeah.
But it's always fun to do this.
It is fun, and we will do it next week. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at casualgmpodcast@gmail.com. We will get to your questions on the air. Swing into our chat and ask almost completely irrelevant questions like Shannon does. Get a little bit frustrated with us like Funky did tonight. Or, join us like Zaquan and One Pride did. And, of course, A6.
Yep.
Who supplied most of these questions tonight, I believe. So,
no, Brian, my buddy Brian did.
Oh, I don't know that I've differentiated between those two people yet. So,
yes, A6 is not Brian. Brian's not A6.
Gotcha. So, we appreciate you guys coming out. Hopefully, the Lions will have a good showing and get a W here in Dallas this coming Sunday. And if we do, we'll talk about that next week on Tuesday.
Right on. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell other Lions fans. We're trying to grow the community, and we are getting closer to getting Drew a new hat once we get to 50. So let's keep marching. All right, guys, we will talk to you later. Drew, it was good to see you.
You too, buddy. Feel better.
All right, we'll do. Later, dude.
Bye.